Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Good afternoon to all the participants. Very warm welcome on behalf of HRDC Gujarat University, HRDC Gujarat University Center on this today's session. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our expert for the day, Dr. Pravin Joshi. Good afternoon, sir, and welcome on behalf of Human Resource Development Center, Gujarat University, and all the participants. Before starting the session, I would like to introduce our expert today, Dr. Pravin Joshi. Sir is MA, MAd, MPhil, LLB, PhD. He is a renowned poet and author. He has about 350 poems published in reputed national and international journals. He has published more than 250 articles and write-ups in many prestigious periodicals and newspapers. He is an eminent short story writer. Sir earlier has worked as a head of the Department of English, as vice principal, DRB Sindhu Mahavidyalay, Nagpur. Presently, Sir is director at Prerna College of Commerce, Nagpur. Sir is also research supervisor in English at Nagpur University. Sir has authored 3 books, published 90 research papers at national and international level, and delivered more than 400 talks in different colleges and universities. Attended 60 conferences, honored with Bharat Shiksha Ratna Award, Society Amity, Social Amity Award, and Educational Excellence Award. He has rendered his service as President Forum for Creative Writers in English, ex-member Board of Studies Nagpur University, member Research Publication Committee Nagpur University, editor Dewdrops, a literary journal, editor English textbooks Nagpur University, editor at Prerna International Research Journal, editorial board member Langit International Research Journal, advisor at Creative Books New Delhi, editor at Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar 125th birth anniversary souvenir published by Nagpur University. He is also president Nagpur Youth Culture and Social Forum. Sir, it is my pleasure to welcome you for today's session. On behalf of HRDC and all the participants, I request you to hand over to start the session.
Thank you, sir, for this elaborate introduction. It's great pleasure addressing the participants of this refresher course. Some of the known faces are also there. Just see whether I can share my PPT with you. Today, the topic is academic language, its dynamics and morphologies. It should have been without apostrophe, that is its ITS, and some typing mistake is there. In fact, this academic language, its dynamics and morphology, this topic has come out of my concerns for the language that is used in research papers, theses, dissertations, or academic writings. It is more based on my experience that I would like to share with all of you. Some of you may be pursuing your doctoral research. Some of you may be guides, and some of you may be opting for postdoctoral research. From my experience, I can say that since I have evaluated, examined more than 500 theses, in most of the doctoral research writing, the researcher is not very much careful about the language he or she uses. Now, it's true that the researchers are in the learning process. But then when we write, a research dissertation or thesis or research paper or any academic writing, we should be very careful whether our language is really academic language or not. So, what is the dynamics of this academic language, or what is the morphology of academic language that we are going to see today? What is academic language? Some definitions have been given here, which of course are not necessary for you, but it's a kind of revision for you. Academic language refers to the oral, written, auditory, and visual language proficiency required to learn effectively in schools and academic programs. This academic programs includes your research paper writing, thesis writing, dissertation writing, your academic articles writing, and everything. So the most important word here is proficiency. We must develop that kind of proficiency. We must study this particular topic of academic language very carefully and consciously. Let us not have a very casual approach towards the use of our language, towards the use of the idioms and phrases and even the words. We have to be very conscious and very careful about using language in academics. The word important is proficiency. Then we come to the next paragraph, that is the language used in classroom lessons, books, tests, and assignments, and is the language that students are expected to learn and achieve fluency in. So proficiency, number one. Number two is fluency. And we are supposed to expect the same kind of proficiency from our students as well when we teach. Frequently contrasted with conversational or social language, academic language includes a variety of formal language. What does it mean? It means that academic language should not be a conversational one. It should have its own status. It should have its own dignity. It should not appear a day-to-day use language. And that is more or less a kind of formal language. Avoid personal or familiar language in academic language while using academic language. Now, when I come across doctoral research papers or doctoral thesis, but I find that the researcher always uses, I have taken this topic, I have chosen this topic, my guide has advised me to take this topic. In academic language or in research, this I, me, my, these personal pronouns have to be dropped. They are never part of your academic language. I have decided to take this topic. Wrong. This is my selection. Wrong. if somebody uses this kind of personal language in academic language from the universal set standard, it is not acceptable. The examiner may approve or may accept your thesis. But getting PhD or any postdoctoral degree is a different thing. And learning academic language, using academic language is entirely a different thing. What we can do is that I have chosen this topic. Wrong. This topic has been chosen. This topic has been selected. This should be the construction. This I, me, my, we, us, is how to be dropped when we use academic language. One thing we have seen that academic language must not be a conversational one. Number two, it should not be, we should avoid personal or familiar language and personal pronouns. Next is you should particularly avoid colloquial, idiomatic, slang or journalistic expressions in favor of precise vocabulary. Colloquial language, slang, journalistic expressions we must avoid in academic language. What are the features of academic language? What should we do? What are the aspects on which we should focus when we use academic language? Number one is academic language must be explicit. Academic language must be explicit. What does it mean? It must not be a complicated one. Many people have the habit of using super formal words, complicated construction, unusual or rare types of words which are hardly used in the language. Such words have to be avoided. Shashi Tharoorian language is not acceptable. That is his hobby. That is his own style. But then as far as research language or academic language is concerned, it should be explicit, means easily understandable to the readers. So explicit. Number two, it should be formal and factual. Now just I am giving you two sets. See the first example. She has decided to accept the job. And second, she has decided to accept the job. You can find out the difference. The first sentence is formal. The second becomes informal. So the expressions like don't, didn't, can't, they are not acceptable in academic language. Haven't, hasn't, shan't, aren't. That all goes into making informal language, not formal language. If you have to write can't, you must not write can't, you should write cannot. Haven't, not acceptable, you should write have not. Hasn't, not allowed, it should be has not. Second sentence you can see, the second set. The girl whom I met in Singapore was interested in working in Australia. The girl I met in Singapore was interested in working in Australia. Hope you get the difference between these two sentences. In the first sentence, there is a conjunction. That is whom. That is missing from the informal sentence. So the proper use of conjunctions has to be there. The girl whom I met in Singapore was interested in working in Australia. This is a formal sentence because whom is there. That is for the sake of clarity. And in second sentence, whom is missing. That becomes informal. The next set you can find. We went to Barcelona for weekend. We have a lot of things to tell you. This is formal. Clarity is there. It is explicit. There is no deletion of any kind of words there. If it has to be made into informal one, went to Barcelona for the weekend, lots to tell you. The second sentence becomes informal. So this is how the academic language should be: number one, explicit; number two, formal and factual. I have given the examples of formal and factual. Next, the language should be objective. It should be analytical in nature. What does it mean? Analytical in nature. An analytic language is a language that organizes word and grammar by strict word order instead of inflections. The sentence construction should be grammatically correct. In poetry, it is allowed. Giving you simple example, he went to school. It is academic. It could be to school he went. This is not allowed in formal language. This is not allowed in academic language. Grammar must be followed in academic language. That is called analytical in nature. Subject, object, complement, they should be in sequence, or whatever grammatically acceptable sequence of the sentences, depending on the kind of the sentence is acceptable, that only we should follow. That is analytical in nature. Number one, we have seen academic language should be explicit. Number two, we have seen it should be formal. Number three, that is, it must be analytical in nature. Number four, should not be complex. We have to avoid complexity at all cost. One should be able to understand the language easily. Many people feel that sending the readers to the dictionary to consult the dictionary is their great achievement. If a common reader is not able to understand the language you have used, that's not a good quality of the language. It will not make your language very impressive. You read the writings of Pandit Nehru, you read the writings of Radha Krishnan, you read the writings of Mahatma Gandhi, or you take any great writer. The complexity is not involved there. So in academic language, we must avoid being complex. Next point is it should be clear and concise. Writing clearly and concisely means choosing your words deliberately and precisely. Constructing your sentences carefully to eliminate deadwood. That is the next quality of academic language. First, it should be explicit. Number two, it should be formal. Number three, it should be analytical in nature. Number four, it should not be complex or complicated. And number five, it should be clear and concise. Where you can tell the whole phrase in a single word, use the single word. It is not necessary to put so many words where one single word is available. That is clear and being concise. What are the resources for academic writing? First, we have seen the characteristics, the features of academic language. Once again, we revise. Number one, it should be explicit. Number two, it should be formal. Number three, it should be analytical in nature. Number four, it should not be complex. And number five, it should be clear and concise. What are the resources for academic writing? From where can we learn academic writing? Dictionaries are there, both bilingual as well as monolingual. Then structure of academic text that we can study. Referencing, oral presentations, writing and referencing. These are the resources for developing academic writing. Of course, reading makes you perfect. The more you read, the more you will learn. The more you focus on the usages of the words, idioms and phrases, the more acquainted you will be with the morphology of academic language. What are the objectives of academic writing? Academic writing is based on research and not on the writer's own opinion about a given topic. When you write your research papers, when you write your thesis, when you write your dissertations, it should be based on research. When you write objectively, you are concerned about facts and not influenced by personal feelings or biases. In academic writing, absolute objectivity is very important. If you are writing your research paper, it should be based on your research. Your personal opinion without any proof, without any evidence will not matter. Whatever you write, it should have the textual evidence available there. Without textual evidence, your writing carries no meaning at all. Personalized opinions have absolutely no place in academic writing. It should be based on facts. When you write objectively, you are concerned about facts and not influenced by personal feelings or biases. Even when presenting an argument to the reader, try to show both sides if you can and avoid making value judgments. See how wonderfully it is given here. Objectivity, absolute objectivity has to be observed. And our personal biases, our personal feelings should not go in our academic writing. Then the other objective, the second objective is objective analysis or a discussion, and in that manner express an attitude. In order to convey attitude without using, for example, instead of I think, you may use words such as apparently, arguably, ideally, strangely, and unexpectedly, and like that. That shows our attitude towards language. Already I have told you that first person pronouns should not be used in academic writing. I think, in my opinion, it is my guess, this is my feeling, this must be avoided. You can use the adverbs like apparently, arguably, ideally, strangely, unexpected, like that you can use. Note that the attitude you are expressing should not be based on personal preferences, but rather on the evidence that you are presenting. Whatever you say, it must be substantiated with the evidence. These two are the objectives of your academic writing. Then types of academic writing are: number 1, formal; number 2, analytical; and number 3, explicit. So formal writing requires considerable effort to construct meaningful sentences, paragraphs, arguments that make the text easy to comprehend. Conversational English should be avoided and facts and figures should be presented in a clear manner. This is formal writing. Number 1, formal writing requires a lot of effort, considerable effort. Number 2, we must write meaningful sentences. Whatever argument we do, it must be supported with facts and figures. And conversational style must be avoided at all costs. Academic text should be factual, concise, and accurate. Choose words precisely and carefully. I will give the example later on. How to choose correct words so that the reader can accurately understand the concepts within the text. See, whenever great writers write, each word carries a meaning. It has got some kind of connotation. every word in the sentence has some kind of significance. It reflects something. There are no meaningless words or redundants. There are no superfluous words. It is important to remember that academic texts are written with an academic audience in mind, and your writing style needs to conform to the conventions of the field you are studying. Always keep in mind that your thesis, your research papers, your dissertations are likely to be read by academicians. So the language should also be of that standard. In between, I have heard that a thesis was not accepted by the examiner on the ground that the language was very conversational. The language had no research standard at all. And the examiner had asked the researcher to review the entire thesis and improve the language and use the academic language. So it can happen. If you are a guide, if you are a supervisor, if you are going to be supervisor, you must teach your students what exactly is academic language and how it should be used. We are looking at types of academic writing. Number one, we have seen formal language. About formal language, we can say number one, that it requires considerable effort to construct meaningful sentences. Number two, the academic text should be factual, concise, and accurate. And number three, we must bear it in mind that the reader is also an academician. That is formal language. When we come to analytical part, what are the important points? In academic writing, the complexity of the subject matter is acknowledged through critical analysis. If there is some complexity, we have to explain it properly in the form of critical analysis. This can be done through asking questions or examining the evaluating evidence. Through critical analysis, we are able to add a new perspective to a subject instead of just rewriting what has already been written. Why critical analysis is necessary? Because a new perspective can also be added. What is research? Research is adding a new perspective. Either you invent or discover something new, or you interpret or analyze the text with a new perspective, or you work on the gap that exists. That is research. Treating your topic and material in an analytical manner should seep through in your language. Part of being analytical in your writing is to compare and contrast. So if you want to be effective and analytical, you can use the technique of compare and contrast. Anita Desai may also be a feminist. Shashi Deshpande may also be a feminist. When you study Shashi Deshpande, you can also quote the examples for comparison or contrast from Anita Desai. This is how you can properly analyze. Nowadays, the research is going on like this, that we take one particular novelist or writer or poet and take only some of the poems or some of the novels for study. R.K. Narayan has written about 13, 14 novels and we take only 2. I don't understand how we can form a perfect perspective about R.K. Narayan by studying only 2 novels. If the researcher is asked about other novels, he or she is not able to say anything about those novels, saying that I have selected only these 2 novels. There is no proper comparing and contrasting in the ongoing research. While writing your thesis on R.K. Narayan, you can also quote from Mulkraj Anand, from Raja Rao. But for that purpose, we have to study those writers also. Doing research, pursuing research on one particular writer does not mean focusing on only one particular writer. We are also to study the contemporary writers to understand one particular writer. So comparing and contrast is very necessary as far as analytical part, convincing part of research is concerned. It also means that you explain, give reasons, draw conclusions, make suggestions and recommendations, and support with this all with evidence. In analytical language, you have to explain, you have to give reasons, you have to draw conclusions, you have to make suggestions and recommendations also. But all should be based on facts. Textual support should be there. Then only your language can become really an academic language. The third thing, that is explicit. Academic writing is explicit in several ways. First and foremost, it means that there is a clear presentation of ideas in the paper. We have to present our organized ideas, not chaotic ideas. They should be properly sequenced. Many times we see that the researcher just falters, moves ahead uncertainly. The researcher is not sure what exactly he wants to prove. What exactly is he focusing on? He's not sure. Many times in Viva examinations, I asked the researcher, what was your hypothesis? So this was my hypothesis. Then your conclusion must go keeping your hypothesis in mind. That hypothesis may be confirmed, may not be confirmed. But you must bear in mind while giving your conclusion what your hypothesis was. What was your assumption earlier? Many times I find that there is no absolute connection between the hypothesis and the conclusion. What kind of research is this? all ideas must be logically linked with each other. They should be organized in a logical flow. The scheme of chapterization must be logically arranged. Sometimes the first chapter has nothing to do with the second chapter. The second chapter has nothing to do with the third chapter. The hypothesis has nothing to do with the conclusion. And nowadays there is a fashion that themes and techniques, whether they are necessary or not, in most of the research writings I find unnecessary techniques are added when there is no need. If focusing on the technique is necessary in your research, you can do it. But when technique has nothing to do with the rest of the chapters, why that technique part? Style and technique unnecessarily added, and nobody bothers about that. All the chapters should be logically sequenced. That is, having explicit writing. If it is logically explained, if it is logically organized, the reader, the examiner, the researchers, the scholars have no problem in understanding your ideas, in following your ideas. Let us avoid chaotic writing. One way to accomplish clarity and structure in your text is through the use of signpost. Signpost, what are signposts? They are words and phrases that you can use in your text in order to guide the reader along. Signposts become important to add the element of the language being explicit. Signposting can be divided into two different categories: major signposting and linking words and phrases. So we have seen three aspects, three types of academic writing. Number one, formal. Number two, analytical. And number three, explicit. These three aspects we must keep in mind when we write for academic purpose. Now, in one of the research writings, I have found that the word said and the word told and the word explained appeared dozens of times. Said, told. Explain. Using only said and told every time is not acceptable in academic writing. You have to use impressive verbs You have to use impressive verbs in your research paper. The general process to write a successful paper is, you have done the research, agreed that you are going to write a paper to tell your findings and plan your manuscript. your performed research, decided to publish a paper to report your findings and structured your manuscript. Both sentences convey the same meaning, but the second one clearly does so more effectively. See the difference between these two sentences. You have done the research, agreed that you are going to write the paper to tell your findings and plan your manuscript. This one sentence. You have performed the research, decided to publish a paper to report your findings and structure your manuscript. Which one is preferred? The second one falls in the category of being more effective. Both sentences convey the same meaning, but the second one clearly does so more effectively. So we have to use impressive verbs. The language you utilize in your paper is a significant factor in how impactful your paper is. If you want to make your paper very effective, convincing, impactful, then the language that you use plays a very vital role. And for that purpose, the language must be formal and academic. The terminology must be appropriate for your field of study. If you want your paper to be an outstanding one, it is essential that the points are articulated intelligently and succinctly. So, what we have to be very careful about is how to make our paper, our research more effective, more convincing. We have to use appropriate terminology. See, just I'm giving you a list of certain verbs that you can use in your academic writing. For example, there are purpose verbs. Every time, instead of using, it shows. We can write so many other verbs. We can use so many other verbs. You can avoid only one verb, that is show. It shows, it shows, it shows, it indicates. But there are other verbs also you can use as purpose verbs, like analyze, appraise, define, diagnose, explore, identify, investigate, observe. If you have to summarize something, what verbs you can use? Assess, conclude, feature, highlight. Instead of using the same verb repeatedly at different places, it is better to use different verbs which are available for the same purpose, which mean the same thing. Your thesis will not become dull and monotonous for the examiner or the readers. If you have to indicate control somewhere, what verbs you can use? Constrain, control, govern, influence, inhibit, limit, maintain, prohibit, regulate, secure. If we have to discuss the findings, the verbs we can use is attest, confirm, contain, demonstrate, document, indicate, reveal. It indicates, it reveals, it confirms, it demonstrates, it is documented, it is attested. we must enhance the active vocabulary in order to write research papers or dissertations. If you have to state something, or if you have to show that somebody is stating this, the verbs available are comment, convey, elaborate, establish, identify, propose. If you have to show increase, then advance, development, develop, enlarge, exceed, extend, facilitate, improve, increment or increase, maximize. And if you have to show some kind of decrease, the words are given here, like cease, decline, depress, descend, deteriorate, minimize, subside, reduce, and all that. And if you have to show the change, the verbs are alter, accommodate, evolve, fluctuate, generate, transform, vary, and all that. See, we have to learn the language very consciously. It is not that you learn the language without effort. Without effort, nobody can learn a language that is effective and impressive. There should be continuous conscious efforts on a part. There are many people who add some 5 to 10 words to their active vocabulary every day. And it's not only that, they learn those words. Whenever there is an occasion, they will immediately use those words to confirm to themselves that they have made those words a part of their active vocabulary. That will make your writings very interesting, impressive, effective, convincing, and easily understandable. This I have given, in fact, I have given the copies of this to many researchers who have recently started their research. And many of the researchers have come to me and they said, sir, this is very important for us and we have learned a lot from this. Suppose you have to indicate some information in a figure, then what are the words, what are the verbs available? That is depict, display, illustrate, portray, reveal. If you have to indicate some information in a table, the words available are classify, enumerate, list, presents, summarizes. If you have to show parts, then comprises, compose of, constitutes, encompasses, includes, incorporates, and all such. Now the list is very long and the time at my disposal is very short. There are certain important tips. Phrasal verbs. Tip about phrasal verbs. It is human nature to write the way we think or speak of a certain thing. These constitute phrasal verbs such as find out, break down, put up, or warm up. Substitute such usual conversational phrases of everyday use with something else that is really academic. That is discover. Instead of find out, you can use discover. Instead of break down, you can use disintegrate. Instead of put up, you can write assemble. Of course, if that is the required word there. Instead of warm up, we can use the word heat. So these changes we can consciously make. Tip 2, extraordinarily remarkable versus impressive. The aim is to use formal words. However, the meaning should not be overpowered by complicated words. Use powerful but clear words. Instead of show, you can very well write demonstrates, indicates. Whether they are really synonym or not, that you have to find, that you have to see. And at the same time, you have to take care that the meaning does not change. Use extraordinary words, impressive words in place of commonplace words. But you have to make it clear that the meaning does not undergo any change. First tip we have seen about phrasal verbs. Second, extraordinarily remarkable versus impressive words. Third is about adverbs. The adverbs you select also decide how effective our verbs are. Usually, we use the ordinary, commonplace adverbs like very, quickly. But we can always use impressive adverbs like substantially, rapidly, unusually. Commonplace adverbs can be replaced with such formal substitutes like considerably. I mean, adverbs also we have to choose very carefully. Tip 4 about reporting verbs. In academic writings, it is important to use the correct tone. Often we want to report a finding strongly, while other times adopting a tentative or neutral tone is better. In such cases, carefully select the reporting verb based on your intention. And which are the verbs we can carefully select is, suppose it's something tentative. So the word like imply, suggest. If you want to be neutral, then note, interpret, discuss, reflect, observe. If you want to be strong in your opinion, then it establishes. It disregards the earlier theory. It highlights the opinion of the writer. It is strongly recommended. Such reporting verbs have to be used. I already told you that contractions are not allowed in formal language, in academic language. It has become our habit nowadays. And with the use of mobile phones, we have become more informal in using language. Wanted to meet you but couldn't. That's our messaging language when we use our mobile phone. The adverse effect of the mobile phone is that it is affecting the linguistic ability not only of the students or children but also of the teachers. Instead of saying full sentence, instead of uttering full sentences, they speak using the only words that are necessary there. grammatical construction is not taken care of at all. So contractions are not allowed. That is, isn't, want, or so many that I already mentioned. This makes your language look informal. Use expanded forms such as is not, will not, do not, does not, did not, has not, shall not, like that. Most of the times I found the sign of and being used in research writings. The sign of and. I don't understand how the guides accept that and how the examiners accept that. People have developed the habit of writing and with that sign of and, not and. That sign of and is not at all acceptable in your academic writings. He will come tomorrow and that sign of and will meet me at 10 a.m. It should be and the full spelling of and, not the sign, mathematical sign. So contractions must be avoided. What tips we have learned from this? Number one, we should be very careful about phrasal verbs. The commonplace phrases must not be used. Number two, our language should be impressive. Number three, we have seen adverbs to be chosen very carefully, and impressive adverbs have to be chosen. Some examples we already mentioned here. That is very quickly. Instead of them, we can write substantially. Try to look for a better word. Nowadays, Google has one particular device. You give a word and right there, give impressive word for this particular word and you will get it. You can write, give me better word for this word and you get it. Or simply write words for, different words for this particular word and you will get a long list of that. So choose a better word. Now, the food was very yummy. This yummy word has become very commonplace. So can we use some other word in place of yummy? And your Google will give a long list of that. Attractive. There's a long list for this particular word. It could be engaging, it could be enticing, it could be luring. So why to always use the word attractive? Why not some other word, other word, other adjective, which carries the same meaning? That is adverbs. Then we have seen reporting verbs. Then we have also seen that contractions have to be avoided. Written language. Scientific papers should be written with correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation marks. Punctuation is a major problem with the upcoming generation. For them, full stop, comma, semicolon, hyphen, they don't matter at all. They have not studied it at all. As far as our teaching is concerned, we must teach them the significance of the punctuation marks in written language. We are here talking about written language. Number one, we have seen that we must use correct grammar, spelling, and correct punctuation marks. I remember one particular incident that I would like to share with you. I used to teach my students the deceptive spellings. I used to ask them to learn. The word was vacuum. And I asked the students of science faculty to give me the correct spelling of the word vacuum. And most of them said VACCUM. I said, from where have you learned this spelling? They said, our physics teacher has taught us. She always writes the spelling of vacuum as VACCUM. I corrected them. I said, it is VACUUM. And they were shocked. When it was the physics class, the teacher wrote the same spelling as she had written earlier, VACCUM. And one of the students stood up and said, ma'am, this is not the correct spelling. The spelling of vacuum is VACUUM. And the teacher got infuriated beyond words. When the student argued about the correct spelling, she asked, who has taught you? The student mentioned my name. And she said, tell Joshi sir that in English the spelling of vacuum may be VACUUM, but in physics it is VACCUM. What should we do? Is the dictionary of physics different and the dictionary of English different? Are the spellings different? So this happens. We should be very careful about such things, spellings and punctuation and all that. Then we must refrain from using words that other people have already overused. We should not use overused words. Let us develop that skill of using or avoiding. I mean, using better words and avoiding overused words. In our professors group, there are very good writers. There are very good poets. I keep on reading the articles and some blogs written by our professors of English. And they write very wonderfully. I don't want to name, but there is a professor who always uses extraordinary and impressive words. There are many like that. So let us learn that. One of the teachers of English had given a long list of the words that he had learned from the writings of that particular professor. That these are 300 words that I have learned from you. And he did it consciously. So let us keep on adding such words to our vocabulary. While people may think complex words are best choice, the reality is simple language can have a much greater impact. Simple language is beautiful language. I have always told you, I am not against Shashi Tharoor. He is a good friend of mine. And the whole world appreciates his ability to use the words and the syntax. But that is his personal style. Simple language will always be more convincing, more effective, and more impressive. One should not generalize too much and instead focus on being more specific. That is, we have to be very precise while expressing our views. Let us not be very random or chaotic. Let us be very specific while focusing on our viewpoint. What things we should avoid in academic language? Number one is cliches. They are the words which are regularly, frequently uttered by some people. Some examples have been given here. Let's touch base. Avoid this. It has become a cliche. The apple doesn't fall from the tree. It has become a cliche. Avoid such expressions. I am like a kid in a candy store. It has been so overused that it has come under the category of cliches. Reading between the lines. Beauty is only skin deep. How many times, thousands and thousands of times, millions of times these phrases have been used. Let us avoid such phrases. They are called cliches. In academic language, what things we should avoid? Number one is cliche. Number two, we must avoid jargon. This jargon is the language of a particular profession, particular field. Such word due diligence is AWOL. That is absent without leave. This is used in military. So let us avoid that. Take. And so many other words are there. I mean, we must avoid cliches. Number two, we must avoid jargon language. Stat is also a particular term usually that is used in medical context. Call the doctor. This is the stat. Magic bullet. This is a term for a simple solution that solves a complex problem. So stat we must avoid. Slang we must avoid. The words like lead, low key, on point, If something is lit, it means it's super cool or on fire. This is slang, not a standard language. This is not the word belonging to the area of standard language. Low key, on point, we must avoid. We must avoid double speak. What is the double speak? Double speak is language that deliberately obscures, disguises, distorts, or reverses the meaning of words. Double speak may take the form of euphemism. Euphemism is a figure of speech that the harsh things are narrated in soft words. In poetry, it's okay. But if it gives ambiguity, it distorts the meaning, it obscures the meaning. If it is not easily understood by others, we must avoid that. Some examples are here. Alternative facts instead of lies. A bit shaky instead of poor quality. Good effort instead of that's not right. And so on. We have seen what we must avoid. Number one is cliche. Number two is jargon. Number three, stat. Number four, slang. Number five, double speak. And then we must also avoid newspeak. What is the newspeak? That deliberately causes ambiguity or contradictory language, contradictory meaning, used to mislead and manipulate the public. You know, there was a novel of George Orwell, 1984. It had newspeak. The language, the kind of language that the writer had used was newspeak. Newspeak is the language devised by the totalitarian government of Oceania to replace English, which is called Old Speak. Newspeak was designed, says Jonathan Green, to shrink vocabularies and eliminate subtleties. So any word that causes ambiguity or gives contradictory meaning, we must avoid. These are the examples and observations about newspeak. And our language should be bias-free. This is a very important element of academic language. Let us be clear and direct in meaning. Now see how our language can be bias-free. Our language should be bias-free in the matter of religion, in the matter of sex, in the matter of disability. Now see the example. Franklin is the new African American accountant. This African American is mentioning the race of Franklin. If you want to use the bias-free language, Franklin is the new accountant. His race is not at all necessary to be mentioned there. For someone nearing retirement, she caught on to that new software quickly. I mean, you are pointing to the age of the person, not necessary. She caught on to that new software quickly. We must avoid racial identity of a person. Age, we must avoid. It is not necessary to mention the age. Abdul has some of the highest call center ratings, even though his Saudi accent is strong. Abdul has some of the highest call center ratings. That's enough. This Saudi accent is not at all necessary. That becomes a kind of biased language. John is one of our most active employees, even though he must use a wheelchair. You are pointing out to his disability, that is wheelchair. It is not necessary. It can be properly avoided. John is one of our most active employees, that's all. Even though he must use a wheelchair, that points out to his disability, which we must avoid. The mention of which we must avoid. Then we must also avoid gender bias. Writing in a non-sexist way requires the ability to recognize sexism in the first place. The next hurdle is to figure out a way to eliminate any inherent sexism without disrupting the flow of the piece. The first way to avoid gender bias in your writing is to use gender neutral words. This is very important. Gender neutral words. See the examples. Did the cleaning woman? You are pointing out to a sex, that is, she's a woman. Not necessary. Instead of that, you can use something else which avoids the use or the identity of a sex. Did the cleaning woman bring new trash bags? Answer, I mean the second sentence. Did the cleaner bring new trash bags? In the second sentence, you don't reveal the sex identity of the person. Do we have enough manpower? Why manpower? This manpower also includes woman power. So why to use the word manpower? Instead of that, you can use the word workforce. Do you have enough manpower to finish this project? Instead of that, you can have, do we have enough workforce to finish this project? Workforce is the proper gender neutral word. Let us ask also a question. Are we really so conscious when we write our research papers or our thesis? Instead of businessman, businesswoman, we can use business executive. Instead of chairman, chairwoman, we can use chairperson. Instead of the common man, when we say common man does not do this, why do we use the word common man? We can write average person, ordinary person, common person. See how careful we have to be while writing in academic language. Salesman, not acceptable. Saleswoman, not acceptable. So what's the gender neutral word there? That is salesperson. Sales clerk. Gendered pronouns are also to be avoided. We have the habit of using he everywhere. And that he also includes she. The next thing to be aware of is your use of gendered pronouns. While some still use he as a generic pronoun, this shows a strong bias towards male individuals. So, he or she, or the person, that we can use. Race and ethnicity bias also we must avoid. Disability bias we must avoid. Redundancy, that is the use of superfluous words we must avoid at all cost, and many are not aware of this. Small in size and large in size becomes redundant there. It's large or it's small. Large and small always show size, they indicate size. True facts are always true. Accurate facts, not necessary. Facts are always accurate. Basic fundamentals are always basic. Past history shows. History is always past. There is nothing like present history. Smiled happily. Nobody can smile cryingly or while being in sorrow. His smiled is okay. That contains happiness. Evolve over time. Evolve itself shows that it has become, it has happened over time. Evolve does not require the adverb over time there. Consensus of opinion. Consensus will always be of opinion. Of opinion is not necessary. And there are hundreds of things shouted loudly. Nobody can shout slowly. Race hurriedly. He has run hurriedly. Everybody will run or race hurriedly only. Whispered softly. If it is not soft, that will not be whispering. Deliberations are always thoughtful. Finish completely. When we use the word finish, it means it has been done completely. Jumped quickly. Can anybody jump slowly? He is slowly jumping. Not possible. Let us be very careful about such redundants. So, there are so many things. We can use positive language, positive phrasing. If you can send us, we can complete the process for you. Highlight what can be done. Suggest alternatives and choices. See, we can always use positive language instead of negative language. Some examples are given here. The damage won't be fixed for a week. This is a negative sentence. Instead of that, you can use, you can pick up your car next week. This is an affirmative sentence which has got affirmative, positive, assertive effect. Let us not say the enclosed statement is wrong. In a positive manner, we can use the positive phrasing like, please recheck the enclosed statement. It means there is something wrong. I think that's a bad idea. Instead of that, we can say, I don't think that's such a good idea. It's too expensive for us. Instead of that, we can say it's not as reasonable as we had hoped. So we can also introduce the element of positivity in our language. In Australia, now the syllabus is prepared in such a manner that the students don't develop negative thinking. the words showing negativity are not taught to children in school. The sentences that carry negative meaning, they are not taught to students in school. They have framed their syllabus in such a manner that the students will feel with only positivity. And they speak positive language. Now the time is over. There is a lot we can learn this topic, but the important part is over. Thank you for listening patiently, and if at all you can learn something from this, the session will be a successful one. I thank the organizers for inviting me, my friend Dr. Dushyant and other friends who have invited me to share my ideas with you. I thank one and all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful session.